Good morning, everyone. What we're going to do here today is I'm just going to guide you guys through the notes for the topic of twins. Twins is a pretty cool topic, and I think it's something that if we understand it, it'll help us just see how well we really understand genetics in general and just reproduction in general. So if you guys could look at this slide right here, it has complex inheritance patterns on the top, and it says twin studies. So let's give you a sec to turn to that page. Twin studies. So the main topic we're going to look at today is just how twins work. How does the genetics work? How does the reproduction pattern work? Like, where do twins come from? So the intro part right here, this twin studies part, is just why it's related to science and why, how does it help scientists. So if you were to do an experiment using twins, you can observe certain characteristics that they share. Some of those characteristics are things that are going to be controlled mostly by genetic contributions, while some of those characteristics are going to be things that are determined by your environment, your environmental contributions. So if there is a trait that appears frequently within identical twins, so that means that it shows up often, most identical twins share this same trait, then it's most likely going to be controlled by heredity. Let's take, for example, height. If you have two identical twins, they're probably going to be the same height because that is controlled by your genetics. If you look at another set of identical twins, they're not necessarily going to be the exact same height as the other pair of twins, but they're going to be the same height as each other. If you were to take 100 groups of identical twins, the twin pairs are all going to be the same height as each other. Whereas if you look at something like weight, traits expressed that are differently in identical twins are strongly influenced by the environment. You can have two identical twins who are extremely different weights. Why is that? Well, because your weight can be much more dictated by your environment. And I'm not saying like someone who chooses to live in the forest as opposed to someone who chooses to live in the desert kind of environment. I mean your environment as in like the environment you choose to surround yourself in, your lifestyle choices. So somebody who chooses to overeat is going to be significantly heavier than someone who chooses to undereat. You can very easily control your body weight. You cannot very easily control your height. So height is an example of a trait that would be controlled. Appears very frequently, so it's controlled by heredity. Whereas weight, yeah, there is a genetic component to it, but the trait can be expressed very differently between twins. So it is much more controlled by your environment or your lifestyle choices. So twins, what exactly is a twin? A twin would just be two offspring, or multiple offspring, whatever, offspring in general, that are born during the same pregnancy. It doesn't necessarily mean that they came at the same time. So anybody have a guess as to the longest time between twin births? Nope, not 4 hours. Nope, not 2 days. 7 minutes, that's actually less than 2 hours, so no, not that either. The longest time, although they are usually close in time between births, the longest time, if we go to the Guinness Book of World Records, the longest time is 87 days, 1 hour, and 45 minutes by two girls in Ireland, Waterford, Ireland. The first sister, Amy, was born prematurely June 1st in 2012, and then Kate, the obviously younger sister, was born August 27th. So 87 days apart, almost 3 months the mom was in labor. That's a long time. So just because they are 3 months apart does not mean that they are not twins. They were conceived at the exact same time. One just came very early. But usually the time is close between births. So the different types of twins that occur can be due to several different factors. So let's just remember, up here, look at this picture here, the way fertilization works. Sperm cell fuses with egg cell, and that will create your fertilized egg, also known as your zygote. So the way twins form is dependent on either the number of eggs that are fertilized, how many eggs are fertilized, or the number of zygotes that develop. Okay, so these two factors are going to dictate the type of twin that you either are or that we're going to be talking about. And remember, the zygote is the fertilized egg, the cell that results from fertilization. So some twins are identical. These are known as our monozygotic twins. Mono meaning one, so one zygote. All right, these are our identical twins. And in this situation, this is when you have one egg being fertilized, okay, one sperm cell, one egg cell being fertilized, and that will create one zygote. That one zygote splits into two different embryos. So because you had one sperm cell, one egg cell creating one zygote, and that splits into two embryos, the DNA is going to be exactly the same, nearly identical. Go back there for a sec. Nearly identical. You will have small differences, which we'll talk about in a second, but there will be the DNA is going to be exactly the same because it was one sperm, one egg creating one zygote, which then splits at some point during development. So the monozygotic twins, in every 1,000 deliveries worldwide, there's about 3 of them. So it's not that frequent that it occurs. It's fairly rare. In vitro fertilization, which you guys might know as test tube babies. This is just when a sperm cell and an egg cell are fertilized outside of the body and then implanted back into the mom. Twinning occurs much more often in vitro fertilization. And in monozygotic twins, the DNA, like I said, is nearly identical. And what could be responsible for causing some differences? Why might their DNA be different? Yes, mutations would work. Mutations is definitely a good example of that. Mutations could cause the differences. So, genetic differences would be caused by mutations. What else could be some major differences between identical twins? Why else might they be different? Identical twins don't always look exactly the same. So because of minor mutations, they might be different. But what else? Like I was saying before, environmental choices, environmental lifestyle choices. So the things you decide to do and the environment that you find yourself in are going to dictate differences. If you're in a very sunny area compared to someone who lives in their basement all day, one is going to be darker in coloration. They're going to be more tan. If somebody decides to be a bodybuilder while the other one decides to play video games professionally, you're going to have very different physiques. If someone decides to overeat, the other one decides to eat stale bread and water for the rest of their lives, they're going to be different body weights. So lifestyle choices and environmental factors play a role on twins just like they do everyone else in the world. So how separate the twins are while they're developing is going to depend upon when the embryo splits, when the zygote splits, when the zygote splits into two different embryos. So inside, when the babies are developing, there are these two little sacs that they are going to be inside of. There's the chorionic sac and the amniotic sac. If the zygote splits into two embryos very early, around 1 to 3 days after conception, then the babies will have each their own little sac. If they split 4 to 8 days after conception, then they will share the chorionic sac, so hence monochorionic, and then they will have their own amniotic sac. If they split 8 to 13 days later, they're going to share both of them. So they're going to be pretty close here. They're going to actually be able to make physical contact with each other, whereas here they couldn't because they had this little divider between them. But now they're going to share both of the sacs. If they split about 13 to 15 days after conception, they will not have actually split from each other. They're going to be stuck together. And this is the first known case of conjoined twins. These two twins from Siam, which is where the term Siamese twin comes from. These two guys are the original Siamese twins because they're from Siam, but they are the first case of conjoined twins that was actually recorded and accepted and probably not murdered within minutes of being born. So let's just take this question here. If you have two female monozygotic twins that are born, they grow up, they get married, and each twin has a child with their respective husbands, what is the relationship between the two children? So you have these two girls, they get married, have kids. What is their relationship? Well, familial-wise, they would be cousins. But if you think about their genetics, the kids that are born, their moms are genetically identical. So their dads are different, but their moms have the same DNA. So it's kind of like they could be considered genetic half siblings. So let's take that question a step forward now and think about, well, what if you have two female identical twins and they each marry a set of male identical twins? Are they siblings? We know they're cousins, but are they siblings? Both of their parents have the exact same DNA. And what's cool to think about there is if you have the one couple and the other couple, because they both have the exact same gene pool, it's possible for them to just have the exact same kid. And I think we talked about this earlier in class, but they could have the probability of them giving birth to two kids that could actually look identical to each other is there, which is pretty crazy to think about. So those were our identical twins. But other twins look similar but not necessarily identical, and these are our dizygotic twins, and these are the result of two zygotes that form. So these are what are known as your fraternal twins. So the way this works is that you have two egg cells being fertilized. Okay, two egg cells being fertilized. That creates two zygotes, and from those two zygotes you have two babies. So there's no separation of embryos. So in this case, there's a very, very small chance of having the same DNA. All right, and the reason for that is because you have two different sperm cells fertilizing two different egg cells. It just happens to be at the same time. So the cases of this are a little bit different. They've been recorded differently worldwide. In Japan, it's about 6 dizygotic twins per 1,000 births. In African nations, it's 14 or more per 1,000 births. And as women get older, their chance of having dizygotic twins increases. So a woman who has a baby at 20 compared to a woman who has a baby at 40, the chance of that 40-year-old having twins is significantly higher. So why is it that they have different DNA? Why might dizygotic twins have different DNA? They have different DNA because they are getting two totally different combinations of genes. They're coming from two different sperm cells, two different egg cells. Yeah, they have the same parents, but they are getting two different combinations of those cells. So just like you and your siblings are two different combinations of your parents, dizygotic twins are the same exact thing. So then why do they look similar? If they have different DNA, why do they look similar? Why is it that dizygotic twins, even though they're not identical and share different DNA, why is it that they look similar? They are siblings. Okay, we've had this talk before where I brought up some of your siblings and the ones that I know and how you most of you look pretty similar. You guys do share similar DNA. Not you guys aren't the twins, but twins in general, whether they're identical or not, they all share similar DNA, so they're going to look similar. You guys and your siblings, when they were your age, look very similar, for the most part. But just because you don't have identical DNA doesn't mean you're not going to look similar to each other. You have very similar DNA. So the fact that they share many traits and many genetic similarities is the reason why they do look similar, even though they're not identical. So this is the interesting part of twins, the complications. So a vanishing twin is when you have two embryos that form, but one of them dies before birth, so it isn't actually born. And sometimes if this occurs, you might have two embryos that form, and one of those embryos dies so early that it dies before the first ultrasound, and the parents never even knew that they had twins. And I'm sure this happens way more often than we think. Conjoined twins, like we said before, is when the separation happens a little bit too late and they're attached to each other. And this one is my favorite one. I think this is really very fascinating. Chimerism is when you have two twins that are born. Two twins that are created, but only one twin is born, and there was no dying of any of them. So you have one twin actually coming out, but the other one is there their cells are part of that twin who came out. So you have two embryos that fuse with each other and create one person. Okay, we're dealing with a ball of cells that is one embryo, a ball of cells that is the other embryo. None of those cells actually has a function yet. They're just stem cells with the potential to become blood or bone or skin or muscle, but they don't actually have a function yet. And then they fuse into one embryo, and then that one embryo becomes a person. So we're going to elaborate a little bit more on that in a minute, but that's pretty cool. The last one here is a parasitic twin. So this is when you have conjoined twins being born. Only one of them is fully developed, and the other one, so this one right here, this is our fully developed twin. The other one is attached, but it's not fully developed, and it's almost always deceased. So this baby was born, and it had its twin conjoined to it, but dead. So you have a live person with a dead person attached to them. Usually these situations don't go very well for the baby that's born alive, hence why this is a baby skeleton. That's parasitic because it's attached to it and it's not providing any benefit. It's usually providing a disadvantage, the fact that it's attached. So other twinning situations, are there other animals other than humans that have twins? And if you're trying to think of something specific and you can't, you just want to say yes or no, well, the answer is yes. Other animals do have twins. And a pretty interesting example is the 9-banded armadillo. They have identical twins, usually 4 of them, as their regular reproduction pattern. Not exceptional cases like with us. So this 9-banded armadillo right here, every single time it has babies, it has 4 identical twins. All right, so that noise in the background is my furnace kicking on, so we're going to finish this up really quick right here. So just to give us some closure, twins are the result of an unusual fertilization of gametes. Gametes are formed by what process? Yes, Anna? That is correct, meiosis. What is a zygote? Declan, yes? No, it's not a superhero goat called the Zygote. That's silly, superhero goat. Kyle, what is that one? Yes, of course. It is the fertilized egg. Zygote, Declan, come on, man. What are the 2 main types of twins that we talked about today? Yeah, Avery, go ahead. Right, yes. The monozygotic twins, which are identical, exactly the same DNA, and dizygotic twins, who are your fraternal or non-identical twins, and they don't have the exact same DNA because they come from 2 different sperm and egg cells. That was exactly right, yes. All right, guys, so what I have up on the Classroom site is an NPR podcast. It's pretty short, but it's a pretty cool story about a woman who is a chimera, and then a quick reflection document that I've attached to that if you guys could answer those questions and just post that back on here. Appreciate it. All right? Have a good, I guess, weekend. Won't talk to you until then. All right. Bye.